When you bend, your body doesn't go down. Your body bends forward at the hip joints, and your knees bend forward. So your body, in fact, can actually lengthen. It can follow a little upward release, a little undoing of pressure in your head, at your head and your neck juncture. Your spine can lengthen, allowing less pressure at the hip joints and a free bend of your hips and a free bend of your knees. And put your fingers on your hip joint. Where's your hip joint? Hip joint's right at the crease where your legs and hips come together. Feel that crease? That's where your hip joint is. But when you bend, you're actually going to bend from even lower than that, because the bottom of your hips are lower than your hip joint. So I'm going to have you continue to put your finger where your legs and hips come together, where that crease is. And when you bend, just let that area go straight back as your knees bend. That goes straight back, and your knees go forward, straight forward of wherever they're pointing, and over between your big toe and your next toe, just to avoid injury of your knees. They always stay aligned between your big toe and the next toe. So at first it might feel like you're sticking your butt out, because we're not used to letting our bend include our whole hips. We tend to kind of tuck this a little bit because we feel these bones when they go back when we bend. We feel those bones go back and we think, I don't know, I think I'm sticking my butt out, even though, as you can see by the skeleton, he's not sticking his butt out at all. So when you bend, you might feel this going back, and it might feel odd, like the bottom of your butt, the bottom of the gluteal muscles are going back. But in fact, that's just a normal bend. Actually, sticking your butt out would be shortening your spine, and we don't want that. Your spine stays nice and long. In fact, your neck releases. Your head goes a little bit away from the top of your spine. Your whole spine lengthens, your back widens, and your knees release forward as your hip joints go back. So your head, in fact, is leading away from your spine. Your spine is going towards your head. Your hips are released, bottom of your hips are releasing back, and your knees are releasing forward to keep your center of mass right over between your feet, so that you have a very balanced, very easy bend, and you can shift from one leg to the other depending on what you're doing. If you have to bend very low, you might want to have your legs further apart to have a wider area for that center of mass to balance. And you can just shift one way or another. If you're gardening, if you're out here taking care of getting the leaves, all the leaves from the trees out of the plants, you might have a nice wide stance, but still the bottom of your hips goes back, your knees go forward. And really leading all of this, which I'm not describing in detail, is your neck releasing, your head going away from the top of your spine, so you lose pressure on your spine lengthening, your back widening, and then just a very easy reach of your hands to bend. And this is the same whether you're at the kitchen sink doing dishes, you're reaching over here, you might bend a knee to reach for the dish here, and then you might bend the other knee to reach over here and put it away. So this bend at the bottom of your hips going back and your knees going forward. As your neck releases, your head goes away from the top of your spine, and your spine lengthens and your back widens, is useful for any bend. If you're talking to a little child, instead of dropping down like this, your neck releases, your head goes forward and up to give a little room, a lengthening of your spine and a widening of your back. And your hips release back and your knees release forward, and you can easily bend and talk to the child without putting any extra pressure on yourself. When you bend, first of all, always, the thing that leads the bend, that triggers the bend, is the decompressing of your body that results when your neck releases and your head goes just a little bit forward and up, and your back lengthens. There you go. And your back widens. So those things are primary. Your neck releasing, your head going just a little tiny bit forward and up, your back lengthening. Good. And your back widening. Now, just like you were watching a movie about your hip joints going back and your knees going forward, all the while that you're paying attention to your neck releasing, your head leaning away from the top of your spine, the top of your spine somewhere right up here, wherever that top of the spine is facing, your head leads a little bit forward and up from that. And your spine follows your head. So the only difference is we're going to add almost a thought like you're watching it in a movie of your hip joints going back and your knees going forward. But first I meant to tell you, go ahead and have your feet a little wider apart. Just because that makes it a little easier to bend. And here where your neck releases and your head goes a little, there you go, forward and up. Great, and then your body follows your head. And just like in a movie, your knees go forward and your hip joints go back, but your attention is on this nice lengthening where your head goes away from the top of your spine and your spine goes towards your head. So never are you bending down. You're always, there you go, great. You're always following the direction of your head going away from the top of your spine going towards your head. It's the release of your joints that gets you lower to the ground. All the while, instead of heading down, your body's heading towards your head. And come on back up just by letting your neck release, your head go away from the top of your spine lengthen, your back widen. There you go. Good. And your joints just unbend that way. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about knees and what happens with your knees when you bend. Now the knees release because your neck's releasing, your head's going forward and up, your spine's lengthening, your back's widening. That's primary, and that triggers the release of your knees. And so with my hands, just like I was triggering that natural direction in you, you trigger that yourself by your neck releasing. There you go, your head going forward and up, your spine lengthening, your back widening. And then just an idea that your knees go forward. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it means for your knees to go forward. Your knees, forward of your knees, is always just forward of wherever they're facing. But you want to have them go over between your big toe and the next toe when they go forward. So they're not going inside of your feet, they're not going outside of your feet. They're actually just aiming forward, not down. They never aim down because that would just press the bones into each other. So if you bend and you aim down, you end up pressing your joints into each other, which makes for harder bending. So that's why you aim up to bend. And your knees, almost as if they had headlights on them, just beaming forward. There you go, they just continue beaming forward and over between your big toe and the next toe. And then to come up, your neck releases and your head goes away from the top of your spine lengthens, and that unbends your joints.